Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Today, I get the privilege of interviewing Eliana Bloomfield. Eliana is the founder of Concussion Box, a nonprofit that focuses on fighting the isolation of concussions. She also studies neuroscience at Wesleyan University and works as an emergency medical technician. In her free time, Eliana loves to bake, explore the outdoors, and drink hot chocolate, which I can relate to. So all of those things come to me. I'm so glad that you're here with us today, Eliana. Thank you for being willing to share your story and experience and everything that you're doing in this concussion space.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's just start off with you introducing yourself a little bit more. I'd love to hear, kind of where you're from and what you love and just, tell us more about you.
Yeah, sure. Well, you got the gist of it with how you introduced me. I was born in the San Francisco Bay Area and grew up there. It's a beautiful place. And I moved out to the East Coast for school. I'm currently studying neuroscience at Wesleyan, which goes hand in hand very nicely with Concussion Box and this focus on concussion work. Yeah, I love spending good time with friends, reading good books, exploring the outdoors, big backpacker, camper, love dogs. I don't know. Those are a few fun tidbits about myself.
Love it.
And of course, hot chocolate.
Important. Did you start studying neuroscience prior to your injury, or was this after injury?
No.
Okay.
That was after injury.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully we'll hear kind of more about that. So tell us about the injury. How long ago was it? What happened? What were your main symptoms? All that stuff.
Sure. So it's been 8 years now since, I guess, what I call the big one. I've actually had 5 concussions, but only one that really kind of rocked my life. So I was at soccer tryouts. I was a big soccer player, and it was during warm-ups. You know, the stretch, it's a great hamstring stretch if you do it right. You lean down, touch your toes, kick your leg back. And the girl in front of me was a little too close. I didn't space it right, and her cleat collided with my temple. And I felt so silly. Like, it's just warm-ups. It's got to be fine. I had been working up to these tryouts. So I took a second, but then I kept playing. And all I can say is that I felt wrong. Like, something just felt off. And I called my dad and cried and went home. And it also happened to be election night in 2016. So that was, at least for my family, a tumultuous night on many levels. And that night, to be honest, it's always funny. Every time I tell my own story, it's funny because it's a story that has a lot of blurry patches for me. So I can't really tell you exactly what happened that night, but that's part of the truth of my story. But I know that the next day I tried to go to school because you had to go to school in order to be allowed to go to tryouts. And I wanted to go to tryouts. And there was a moment in school where one of my teachers asked me to read out loud. And I do remember looking at the page and knowing that they were letters in words and opening my mouth and just nothing. Couldn't make sense of any of it. And I was very distraught and very upset. And I called my mom and she took me to the doctors. And the doctor said, yeah, you've got a concussion. You should be fine in a week. That was not the case. It turned out to be a very hard year I was out of school for a while, then part-time, then back, but still dealing with symptoms. I think for me, it was a lot of headaches and a lot of just feeling off. Can't quite describe it. It wasn't necessarily dizziness, but just feeling like something was wrong. I wasn't really in myself. Yeah, and it was a slow recovery, slower than I ever expected, but I do not have headaches anymore. I do not feel off like that anymore. And I haven't for a really long time. And it felt like that would never be possible when I was going through it. But it's possible because I'm here.
You're living proof. That's beautiful. I'm glad that we get the little sneak peek at the end right now, so people can know.
Exactly.
But I do have a couple questions to bring up
Sure.
point. So, did you finish the tryouts that day, or did you end up leaving and not finishing them?
I left. I didn't finish.
Okay. And did you feel off? Like it sounds like it was pretty immediate. Like as soon as she hit you from that point on, you just had that feeling off?
I think it was a mixture of adrenaline and determination that was kind of getting me to keep going. But I was playing, right? So in the tryouts, they have you do little mini games. And I feel like maybe like a half hour after the kick, I was playing in one of those mini games, but I wasn't moving fast. And I was like, my spatial awareness of the field was all weird. I was playing terribly for just for no sugarcoating. I was like, something is just weird. So I'd say maybe it took a little bit to kick in, but under an hour.
Okay. And then did you do the next day of tryouts? Did you go to tryouts the next day too? Okay. Okay.
Nope.
So the soccer didn't happen that year.
Oh no, the soccer did not happen that year.
Okay. And you said that this was the big one of your concussions, but you've had like 5. Were those other ones prior to this one, or have you had other ones since?
They were since. I think right after having the big one, there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with any time something even touches my head. But if it hits my head, oh, that's scary. But all of the other ones were days, a couple weeks at most. I don't know. I was teaching a 6-year-old how to throw a frisbee, and she threw it really hard into my face. So smaller things like that. But no, they were all afterwards. The most recent being 2 years ago.
Okay. But it was that first one that kind of set everything off.
Yeah.
Sounds like. Okay. And just for clarification, so your mom was able to take you to the doctor. Is she in Connecticut with you now, or was she back, like were your parents close by that when that happened then?
Yes. I was still living in California with my parents. So yeah, I was in high school when that happened. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay. I don't think
no, that's a good clarifying. I was in high school when that happened. So I was living with my parents, and they were there throughout the whole thing. For the little ones afterwards, I've been just me living independently, but yeah, the big one was I was at home.
Okay. And what year in high school? How long did you have?
I was a freshman.
Okay. Well, let's hear more about how this all played out. So how much did you know about concussions prior to this experience? And what about this experience of concussion surprised you?
Yeah, good questions. I'd say pretty much nothing. I mean, I knew that they existed. They were a thing, heard about NFL players, but pretty much nothing. No one close to me had had a concussion. It was a completely unknown world. I think just how long it took and how slow it was, and how even when I was making progress, it felt so hard to see because day by day, right? If you take an inch of a step forward each day, by the time you step a foot, it doesn't feel like you've moved because it's moved so slowly. So that sort of frustration. I was very emotional. It wasn't so much emotional. I think I cried every day, not necessarily always because I was sad, but just something was changing in my brain and my body just did that.
Did you know that it's related to the concussion, or were you, I could see teenagers especially like going through like all the changes that you have that happen in teenagehood anyway, like it might be confusing, like, is this related to the concussion? Is this just me being a teenager? Like, how was that confusing for you guys at all?
Yeah, oh, it's a great question. Not that I recall. I think a lot of things I was able to really attribute to the concussion of like the headache, the fog, the frustration, the like stomach getting upset. I was like, oh, all of these things are going wonky since what was it? The November 8th, 2016, or I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good and impressive. And also even the digestive issues, because that's something that people don't always associate with concussion too. So I'm sorry that you had them, but glad that you recognized that it was also like all related to that. So what other ways did your life change? Like you said, you school was kind of on and off there. Like how, yeah. What did it look like?
Yeah.
Life look like?
So, I mean, I think the most dramatic for me at the time was no soccer, because soccer was really my life at that time. No soccer. And school, I was very determined to still do my schoolwork, but I really needed a lot of help with that. My dad would read me my biology textbook because I still couldn't really look at the page. And I do recall a conversation with my English teacher, and him saying, "You don't need to do this assignment. You don't need to write these essays." I said, "No, but I want to." Very, very stubborn like that sometimes. And I dictated them a couple sentences a day to my mom, and she would type them out because any like light from the screen or typing would really bring on the symptoms. So yeah, everything just slowed. My social life, as a 14-year-old girl, it's not so normal to see doctors more than your friends, but that is what it became. So I'd say that slowed a lot. And at that point, I wasn't really able to ask my friends, "Hey, you want to come over and just sit and do nothing with me and sit in silence?" And I have, even at that point, I have the most wonderful friends. And I know if I had asked, they would have in a heartbeat. But I just wasn't able to recognize that. So yeah, it was a pretty lonesome experience.
Yeah, I think that's a very common thing. Is the kind of the isolating, feels isolating and lonely. And I think that's a good point that you bring out, that it's not necessarily because people were pulling away from you, but you also just didn't know how to ask for what you needed, or didn't feel like you could ask for what you needed.
Totally.
And I am curious. I would love to hear any of the accommodations that you got for school, but before we go there, you brought up not having soccer, and that sounds like it was a big part of your life prior to this. How did you handle that? That's, I think, something that's going to be, people who are listening to this, if they're, a lot of times people do have the way they got their injury was through something that they love doing, and pulling back from that, even partially, but potentially all the way, can feel like a huge loss, and a lot of grief can come along with that. So how did you handle that emotionally, and what advice would you have for teens or others who are in a similar situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was hard. It sucked. At the beginning, I kept making these plans. I was like, okay, I know that once you say you're better, then you have to go to the trainer and go through 4 days of like passing these tests, and then you can start playing again. And I kept making these schedules for myself. Okay, I will feel better at this date, then I'll go to the trainer, and then I'll be back. And I would continuously check the soccer schedule to see if I'd still be able to make it to any games. And I kept just pushing that back and pushing that back and pushing that back. And I would not recommend doing that. The brain has a mind of its own and a schedule of its own. And that just, it led to feeling like I was behind, a lot of feelings of failure. And I think when I started just living in, okay, what can I do instead of what can't I do? So for instance, I was in a school musical, and I had to take some real time off, but it was a very small role and I wanted to keep it, and I kept it. And it did aggravate my symptoms, but it gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of feeling like, okay, this is something that's attainable. And I think similarly with the biology and the papers, there were things that I could do. I just needed a little more help. So I think trying to put the energy into what is possible instead of what isn't possible at the time, but also just letting it be sad. There's no, I wish I could offer some advice that would say, oh, here's how you get away from the grief of that. Here's how you get away from that like complete life change. Just ride the waves. Getting away from it sucking, it'll come back to bite you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I think, really good advice. The like letting yourself have those emotions that you need to have as they come up. But when you're able to trying to put that energy into what you can do instead of what you can't, I think that's very wise. And I love that the brain has a schedule of its own. I feel like that should be embroidered and put on a pillow or something.
Yeah.
People dealing with head injury recovery. Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Any comments as well or advice for maybe teenagers or others who are dealing with that social isolation piece? Things that you know now that you maybe, if you could go back, what would you tell yourself or someone in a similar situation regarding the social piece?
Yeah, I would ask my friends to come and sit with me and lie down with me, listen to an audiobook with me. I think it's so possible to be alone together, as opposite and confusing as that sounds, but to just be in the same space as other people who you love and who love you goes such a long way. I think a lot of, especially in high school or middle school, people, no one knows how to deal with it. Oh, someone's going through something so big. What do you do? It's probably new. They probably have never had a friend who's gone through something like this. But I mean, this can apply to pretty much everything in life. It's crazy what can happen if you just ask. So I think just asking people to meet you where you're at instead of trying to rally and meet them with the quote unquote normal things that they're doing,
I love that. I think that's so important because that's like you being authentic and real and vulnerable, which allows for deeper connection and doesn't put that stress on you to show up in a way that is not even possible for you at that time. So I think that's so good. And there is something to be said for that co-regulation, being alone together. Like little kids, when they're, as they're first starting to learn to play, they do the parallel play, right? They just want to be next to each other, but they're playing with their cars separately. They're not interacting. It's just like, but being together, being with people can be very healing. And I think if it's, people that are there because they love and trust, like you trust them enough to ask them to come, I think that makes a lot of sense, that it could be very healing. I think that's really beautiful. And asking people for what you need, like telling them how they can help, because that is something that's really confusing for a lot of people sometimes. That's really beautiful. Thank you for that. And we might come back to similar kind of questions, but I wanted to bring that out as you brought that up. So what other accommodations did you have at school, or what helped you get through those school years?
Sure. Oh, this is going to test my memory from a foggy time, but
whatever you can remember.
Yeah, extensions. I no PE. We just cut that out. Not even like I had to go sit on the sides. I just didn't go. And half days for a certain period of time. I think they said, you can wear sunglasses in class, but I don't think I ever really did. Yeah, that's what's coming to mind right now. Just
were people pretty understanding? Was the school supportive? Like, how was that experience for you?
The school, my guidance counselor at the school. So at my school, there were 3 guidance counselors for the hundreds and hundreds of students, and they split you up by last name. And I just got lucky. The one assigned to all the B's was super supportive, super understanding. To be honest, I think the lack of accommodations came from myself and from me trying to rally. I mean, a lot of my friends at school, even when I was only a few months into my recovery, didn't really know what was going on. I remember one of my best friends asked me at one point, hey, is that concussion thing still happening? Because I just, as a kid, I did a lot of theater, and I guess it came into good use there. And I tried to act as put together as I can. And I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing, because I think it did help me feel more like myself, but it definitely took a toll. And I think I could have let myself be in the state of recovery a little more authentically when I was at school. But yeah, I think I could have if I had asked for more accommodations or if I had accepted more of the accommodations, I could have had even more support. But I was, I don't know. My mom tells the story of when I was like 2, when we were at a little gymnastics class, and all the parents were helping the little kids like do a flip over this bar. And I apparently looked at my mom and I said, "Let my do it," in a little 2-year-old voice. And I think that that 2-year-old voice definitely came into play when I was at school. And we were talking about accommodations. No, I don't need it. Let my do it.
That's awesome. And so 2-year-old, yes, I see that happening. That's awesome. So, well, tell us a little bit about how long, how long did it end up taking, and I imagine it's still a process. It seems to be, it's not like it was from this date to this date, but when did you, over what span of time did it take till you were like, okay, I feel like I can I'm back more to myself?
Well, 345 days, but who's counting? But I counted. I counted.
Less than a year. That's actually
less than a year. Exactly. So that's when I got cleared from physical therapy. But I was still I was back to being active and doing social things before then. I went to summer camp that year, and that was, let's see, maybe 7 months afterwards. And I would still need to take a little more rest time for myself. I remember once they turned on these flashy lights at a dance party, and I was out. I was out. We were out of there. But I was able to do a lot. But by the time that I felt like I was really mostly through it, it was just about a year. And I'd say after that, I mean, I think the longest lasting symptom is fear of getting another one. And just also this a biological stress response of, something touching my head there, and all the connections go. And that is associated with major pain and trauma in my body. So my body goes, my neck muscles got really tight. So I had cupping all over my back. And I mean, to this day, I have really tight upper back and neck. That started then, I think, from a lot of just guarding and protection. So it's a lot of indirect effects that I'd say are lasting, but I really do feel like it is part of my past more than it's part of my present. But that really differs from person to person. I've talked with people who are 10 years out and still those concussion headaches come on sometimes. And I've talked to people who it was 1 week, it was barely even in anything. So it so depends, and it doesn't always correlate with the biggest of blows. Or, I've heard of people getting the horrible concussions from bonking their head on a cabinet in the kitchen, and then a football player being tackled and being just fine. So
yes, it doesn't make sense. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
No.
Yeah. No, excellent points. Thank you. So what were the things you mentioned? Physical therapy. What treatments or therapies did you try that were most helpful for you?
Sure. Yeah. So I did physical therapy. I actually became very good friends with my physical therapist. She's actually on the board of Concussion Box, which I'll get to later. But yeah, so physical therapy was a lot of balance exercising, eye movement exercises, did a lot of heart rate monitoring. I got one of those straps that you put around your chest, and because a lot of my symptoms, there was certain heart rates, and my heart rate would go up and then it would spike, or my heart rate would do these crazy jumps. That was an effect that I guess I could add that to the things that surprised me section.
Yes.
So we would work on just trying to gradually okay, go on a walk, get it up to 110. Okay, walk a little faster. Can we get it up to 120 and be okay? Yeah, we thought about going to a chiropractor, and I went, and they told me what they were going to do, and it was just too scary to me, the idea of someone touching my head. So we left, and that was that. I went to talk therapy to deal with a lot of the anxiety that that had come with it. There was one doctor's appointment. It was a bad doctor's appointment where the doctor looked at me and touched my head. That's a no-no for anyone with a concussion. You don't do that. And said, "You are anxious," with a capital A. And I said, "Yeah, thanks for the broadcast." Like, I know, because my head's been jiggled around. But honestly, more than anything, I think it's so natural to say, oh, okay, I want to do something so I can feel like I'm moving towards fixing. But honestly, time is the most effective therapy in my opinion. Yeah.
The time to heal. Yeah. And I think it's important that it's not that you were sitting in a corner waiting for time to pass. You were doing things. You were like still actively using your mind and using your body and going to things. So I think, but having that patience for the time that it takes, however long that takes, is key and important. Did you feel like, other than that one terrible session, did you feel like the talk therapy was helpful?
So the talk therapy, definitely. That one terrible session, that actually wasn't with a therapist. That was with, I saw a neurologist, a few sports medicine doctors, and another just like primary care. That was one of the sports medicine physicians. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, the therapy, I'm grateful for them. I am definitely grateful for them. It's hard to say, did they work? Because I've only lived the path where I had them. I didn't live that other potential scenario where I didn't have them. So it's a hard one to speak to.
No, that's fair. But you did feel like it was good. That's good. I'm glad you were It was good. We talked a little bit about your friends, I guess, but if you want to mention anything else, but how did your injury affect the people closest to you?
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't want to speak for them. To get the best answer to that, you'd have to ask them. But I can give you my educated guesses. My friends, I think it was just like confusing. Like, why does she keep saying no to hanging out? Does she not like it? Like, why does she keep saying no? So I think confusion is definitely at play. And also I've been told that confusion was at play. And for my family, so at that time it was my older brother and my parents and my dog, very importantly, at home, and very worrisome. I mean, I think especially for my parents to just see this daughter that they'd always known to be a ball of energy, running around doing everything, probably too many things, all of a sudden be just like immobile. So very worrisome. And for my brother too. And it was he was applying to colleges at that time. It was also like a turbulent time in his life. And so we were a little bit of a mess, the four of us. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to that feeling, but I'm trying to imagine what my parents would say, and they're probably something like, "Oh, there's no words," just like, it's from what they've said. It's like a nightmare to watch their kid just struggle so much, and it's not like I could really talk with them that much about what I was going through because the talking was hard. Yeah, I don't know if that's a very coherent answer, but kind of what you'd expect, like worrisome, confusing, anxiety-inducing.
Very disconcerting, I imagine. Yeah. Like you said, I had this daughter who was this way, and now all of a sudden there's all these things going on, and she's not even able to tell us about it. Like, I think that'd be very challenging. Was there anything that you could see that helped them, or that you would say would be like, what advice would you have for caregivers, those loved ones who are watching their loved one go through something like this?
Yeah. I would say that, concussions affect everyone. It's not, right? There's the person who has the concussion, and sure, it affects them in the most obvious way, but it affects the caregivers too. And I think that, I don't know, for a caregiver, finding the people that you can lean on, and just knowing that like you are allowed to need support too. And even though, right, like I wasn't really in a place to be the one supporting my caregivers, but they have really good friends, and I know that their friends were there for them too. Yeah, so I would say that.
That's beautiful. And any advice as far as what caregivers could do that would be most helpful for the person that they're loving and supporting?
I think in a general sense, meeting them where they're at. My dad did this thing where he would choose an inspirational song every night and play it for me. And at a certain point, he would run out of inspirational, like the songs weren't actually inspirational. It was just a song that he liked. And he was like, see, an inspirational song. But exactly. So I think, finding the little things that they and you can find joy in together, and just going and being with them. You don't have to be engaging in conversation. You don't even have to be doing an activity, just being around. I would say, this will differ from person to person, but something that would really be hard for me is when someone would ask, like, how are you feeling? Do you have a headache right now? How are you feeling? Because the answer was most usually like, yes, I have a headache. I always have a headache. Headache hasn't stopped in like 4 months. And it was like a salt in the wound type of thing. So I think being able to have a really honest conversation about like the type of communication that would be helpful, because it makes sense from a caregiver's point of view. If you're trying to care for someone, you've got to know when they need more care, when they need less care. But I don't know, so coming up with some sort of, all right, you tell me, or I'm going to ask you once a day at 2 p.m., something like that. Because I think a lot of asking can really just, even if the intentions are great, it can not be such a great thing. It can be more disheartening than anything.
That's really good to know. I think that's helpful to put out there. So thank you. Did you have a conversation like that? What was helpful for you in your situation?
Yes. Yeah. I think for me, I was very much so wanting to not be asked, but I'll let you know. I'll tell you. And I don't know how good of a job I did of that, to be honest. A lot is blurry. A lot is blurry. I could say something, but I would have made it up. So I want to be honest with y'all. So I don't really know.
That's fair. Okay. Well, thank you. That's helpful. So what things were most helpful for you in discovering and loving yourself post-concussion? Because you were saying your parents felt like they have a different daughter here now. I imagine you probably felt different too, to some degree at least. What helped you to know who you were now and love yourself?
Yeah, just to keep moving forward. I really didn't want to end soccer on that note, so I did go back to soccer a year later. And to be honest, I didn't like the culture of the team, and I knew being active was really important to me, but I knew it would also take me a long time to work back up to the level that I was at before. So I stopped playing soccer. But I think it was very important for me to not have getting a concussion be my last go with soccer. So I think finding if there's any things like that are really important that you do for yourself, to do them, and just moving on and knowing that you are more than one given activity, and that things are allowed to change, and just keep moving forward.
I love that. And I guess this is kind of a similar idea or theme here, but what helped you maintain hope through this recovery journey?
I think being able to see progress reflected back on me, even though I couldn't always see it. So but when my physical therapist would say, you couldn't do that 2 months ago. There's actually a great app. I'm going to sound like a poster child for them. I didn't use it during my concussion, but I've used it for a different injury. But it's called Bearable, like bear, like a bear, and then Bearable, where it's made for people going through chronic things, injuries, illnesses, go figure. And you can track your symptoms, a whole host of symptoms. You can tailor it to you, and then you can see, oh, look, it charts it out for you. So say you're looking at pain, you can see, oh, look, pain's actually gone down, even though I didn't notice it. So just having that reflected back. But to be quite honest, there were a lot of moments where I didn't have a lot of hope. That's the honest truth of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think both of those are important points to make. That sometimes there's hope is hard to find. And also, again, the people around you being able to point out to you progress can be can be really good. That's really good. Thank you. Is there anything else about your concussion experience or things that you've learned along the way that you would like to share?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's jump into the concussion box. I want to hear how that came about, what it is, and what do you do for it?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So during my recovery, like we've talked about, one of the things that really stuck with me was, wow, this is isolating. It's got to be isolating for other people too. And honestly, during my recovery that I had a lot of time on the couch, a couple of ideas started floating around of, what are some ways that isolation could be addressed? And those ideas marinated, shall we say, for like 6 years. And then one day I said, okay, I'm gonna try to put these into action and we'll just see where it goes. And here we are. Concussion Box bloomed from that. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, really dedicated to addressing the isolation of concussions. So the main way that we do that is twofold. One way, we have our audio library of concussion stories. So that is where we have stories from caregivers, we have stories from medical professionals, and a lot of stories from people who have experienced concussions. And it's a 5 to 15 minute audio recording, no TED Talk or anything, very casual, of someone just speaking into a recorder and telling their story, some advice they have, lessons they learned. And the idea behind that is so that someone who has a concussion, or it's someone who's a caregiver, going through any of those experiences, can listen to one or many of these stories in their own time, their own space, so that they can be cognizant of their own needs and symptoms. And just know that, hey, I'm not alone. Ooh, or hey, maybe I could try doing that. And feel like they have a sense of community around them without needing to, go out to a crowded cafe and meet with someone. Just a softer way of finding community. And so that's our audio library. And then the other aspect is the actual box, the care package, which is where Concussion Box gets its name, which is a care package specifically for concussion patients. We've got a mixture of useful items in there, like eye mask, earplugs, and also comforting items like chocolate. If you can't tell, I like chocolate.
It's important.
And
part of recovery.
Yeah, so that we are working with clinics, like physical therapy clinics, doctors' offices, as well as school health clinics, to get those out to people who have a concussion. And that's like the physical token of, hey, you just got this news. The world's probably seeming a little cuckoo crazy, but here's something. Other people have been through things like this. You're not alone in this. And in the box, there's a QR code that leads you to the audio library should someone want to hear some stories and have that audio experience of community. And there's transcripts of all the audio recordings too, so people can choose their adventure. But that is Concussion Box in a nutshell. We've grown a lot over the past few years, now having a good sized team of volunteers and interns. Yeah, and it's really just been wonderful to be able to add this resource to the world and get some feedback that people are really finding comfort and community through these resources.
I love this so much. And I love, yes, the stories piece is especially I feel connected to that, because that's what I'm hoping for as well. I think it can be so isolating. So hearing that you're not alone is huge. And yeah, I love that they can just kind of listen to it. It's short, sweet, and hear all these different stories and different experiences. That's awesome. And the care package, there's something to getting something in the mail. I don't know. That's not like homework or a bill. Like, it's something that you're like, all of a sudden you have to, like, people think they can just send you stuff in the mail and then you just have to do it because they sent it to you. But getting something that's like, oh, somebody cares about me, somebody knows me, somebody loves loves me. I think that's such a beautiful thing. So I love what you're doing with this. I'm curious, is it for only people who are local, or do you send it where do you send?
Oh no, all over. Well, so with the audio stories, we've got people all over the world sharing their stories and listening in. Right now, all of our stories are in English, so that is a limiting factor. But other than that, free for all. And for the boxes, we have sent to the UK, the US, and Canada, mostly within the US and Canada so far.
That's awesome. And how do people, like, how do you find out who needs them? Like, or do people sign up? Like, how does this work?
This is a great question. So so it's still a new program, but we are pairing with school health clinics and so far actually a lot of physical therapy offices. So we'll meet with, someone who's part of that clinic, and they'll say, wow, like this program, we want to be a part of it. We'll send them a bundle of boxes. And then as concussion patients come in, they'll be the ones giving out the boxes. We have had some people order them in individual sales from our website, but the main goal and the main way that we get these out in the world is to go through the channels that concussion patients are already a part of, right? We don't want to ask someone, go online, go do this other thing, go add another organization to your list of places where you're trying to get support. We want to work this support in to make the systems that exist as good as they can be, even better, as opposed to just making another place that someone's got to go. So, I mean, with that said, if there are anyone who's a part of a school clinic or a doctor's office or physical therapy office listening, we are always open to getting this resource out there even more, and that these are the channels that we're looking for.
Beautiful. And I'm curious, is this something that those clinics buy from you, or is it since it's a nonprofit, I don't know, is it something that's donated?
Yeah.
And you send them, is it free for them?
It's a great question. So right now we start off and we'll send a bundle over. It depends on the size of the clinic, how many patients they get, but we'll send a bundle over just as a donation. See if it works for your clinic structure. See, we get, there's a QR code where patients will give feedback and we can share the feedback that we've seen with the clinic, say, hey, here's what your patients are saying, what's your experience? And then after that first bundle, we do ask for a donation when we give the boxes, but it's a conversation that we have. Our main goal is to get this resource out there, and we do recognize that different clinics are in different places financially, in different sizes, and our overall goal is to get this out there. We want to be able to keep doing what we're doing, which is why we do ask for the donation, but it's a conversation rather than our foot in the ground. It's $1 million right now.
That's fair. Awesome. And if there are individuals who are interested in accessing something like this, what would you tell them?
For that one, we typically do like a single sale, and you go to our website, concussionbox.org, and at the menu, there is a tab that says the box. You fill out the form, and a few days later, you got a package on your doorstep.
Love it. That's awesome. I love it. And what kind of feedback have you gotten so far? How has it been received?
It's been really wonderful, right? So there's the two aspects, both with the stories and the boxes. But I mean, our mission is to make people feel supported, and it seems like mission is being accomplished. Of course, not a reason to stop refining what we're doing and always trying to make it better, but that people really do feel supported, that they do feel comforted by hearing other stories, by opening the box and having, some little goodies to go through in a time that's really scary. I have this thank you note that we received from an 8-year-old girl who received a concussion box. Her family got one for her, and it was the cutest thing in the 8-year-old handwriting, just saying, thank you for helping me in my scary time. And that is up on the wall, because that is what we aim to do, to just provide an additional layer of support in what can be a really scary time. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I especially love that this was I don't know. I love your passion for this and that you're doing it, even though, like you said, it for you and from people that I've talked to, if people are dealing with post-concussion syndrome or symptoms, that can last years and years. And for you to have recovered mostly and feel like you're back, but just remembering how isolating it was and how hard that was, and like letting that motivate you to do something like this years later, I think that's so impressive and really beautiful.
You.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I love this work. Yeah.
And I imagine that the neuroscience classes that you're taking, like, what are your plans for the future? I would love to hear what you're.
Yeah. The big question.
Right.
The neuroscience classes that I'm taking definitely do feed into this. There was one class where spent like several months doing a deep dive into working memory and post-concussion. It was fascinating. But post neuroscience, thinking of becoming a doctor. It's a big undertaking, but I am really passionate about the healthcare sphere. I currently work as an EMT, and I do find a lot of meaning in that work. I can't say it's always fun. It is an intense job, but I find a lot of meaning in it. And I don't know if I can be part of just adding some like holistic humanness to how we do medical care. That sounds good to me. I don't know if I can say that eloquently, but I am really, really passionate about this sphere of work.
That's beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of this. Is there anything else about Concussion Box that you want us to know, or ways that people, you mentioned the website, any other ways that people can follow you or get information?
Yeah, totally. So we've got an Instagram. It's just Concussion Box, where we often share little snippets of people's stories that they share, announcements, concussion tips. And we also have our Facebook page. If you're interested in connecting in more of like organization to organization level, we're on LinkedIn. We've got concussionbox.org. And then, we also just connect through, good old-fashioned brochures in doctors' offices, schools, and of course over email. There's all the options. We've got info@concussionbox.org if you have any general questions or concerns. So there's so many ways. And I would just say if this is something that, if you're interested in sharing your story, please don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's just to find out a little bit more of what the process is like. If you're interested in getting a box, you can go to our website. Or if you're just like, oh, something about this resonates with me, I would love to chat more. I am always just happy to chat over the phone, over messages, and we've got a team of passionate people who are always happy to chat too. So really, just say, we're here to help support people going through this experience in whatever form that takes. So don't hesitate even for a moment to reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you. I will put all of those links in the show notes as well, so people can find those if they want to reach out.
Great.
So
thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for what you're doing and the goodness you're putting into the world. I just really love it and respect it a lot.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me and for all the work that you do to put together this podcast. It's really a wonderful thing.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.